Paul Dioen here for Law School Success, Frequently Asked Questions and Questions You Should Ask. We're making this series of videos for a simple purpose to give you a solid foundation of what you need to do in law school to become successful. We will save you time, money, and effort, and we always promise to be completely truthful with you in everything that we convey to you and the information and secrets that we talk about. Law school can be difficult, law school can be hard, or law school can be very easy. Don't make it hard on yourself. You're in the right place to become a law school success. Let's get started. Questions you should ask number 2. What is thinking like a lawyer? Here we're going to cover to ask anyone who talks about you're thinking like a lawyer, ask them what it means right away. We'll go over the real answer and we'll talk about synthesis. Ask anyone who talks about your thinking like a lawyer what that means. Don't fall for the thinking like a lawyer verbiage that comes out of the mouths of the intellectual giants who are teaching you. Ask any one of these intellectual giants about defining thinking like a lawyer, and you won't get an answer that is intelligent, thoughtful, and useful in your future life as an attorney. You got to think like a lawyer. Great. Hey, prof, what does that mean? Then watch the fireworks. Oh, you'll find out later. You'll learn in class. That's what it's about. Yeah, right. Thinking like a lawyer involves taking all the law in a given field and turning each of the elements of the law into a question and asking the questions in relation to the fact pattern yet present. You then find the answers either by common sense application or case law. If their answers are not favorable to the outcome you desire, look for policy decisions on how you can make them favorable by changing the law to conform to other jurisdictions or asking that new law be created under principles of fairness in the common law. If that fails, look to motive and emotional issues and try to upset the other side emotionally and get them or give them opportunities to make mistakes so you can take advantage of it. Let's go over that. Take all the law in a given field and turn each element into questions. Geez, that's easy to do, but it presupposes that you know what the law is and you've memorized it usually. Or at least you have it written down so you can ask all the questions you need to ask about this area of law so you don't miss anything. You apply the facts to each question. You answer generally by common sense and case law. Those are self-explanatory. Why do you think those are the first 2 elements in the M.A.D method? Memorize, apply, and dissertate. Answer also from your opponent's position. You look at what your opponent would think and how your opponent would twist the facts. If the answers are not favorable, look to policy by changing the law. You can change the law under fairness and common law. You can look at other jurisdictions. Your strongest argument in these areas for changing the law or looking at other areas of law is analogy. Estoppel. You can always stop somebody very effectively if you understand how to use the principles of estoppel. Then you got to twist the facts and state the converse or state them from a different point of view. And we talked about this already. Ask that new law be created from fairness of common law. If all else fails, piss off your opponent. The classic example of pissing off your opponent and doing outrageous things was the O.J. Simpson trial. It is a classic example. In fact, they should have a course on the O.J. Simpson trial in law school so that you too can learn how to make outrageous statements, piss off your opponent, so that they will make all kinds of mistakes and just drive themselves deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole. That's the real answer on thinking like a lawyer. You also have to learn the art of suasion, how to get people to agree with you. You need to learn neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It is a way and a manner to talk that convinces people of the rightness of your position. Okay, I'm not going to go into NLP. God, I could spend 50, 60 hours off the top of my head talking about NLP and how to properly speak to people so that they are, quote, hypnotized and they will just subconsciously fall into your clutches of the suasion that you want them to do. And of course, in other sections and areas, we've talked about influence. These are art forms. They don't teach any of this at law school. They don't teach suasion, NLP, and influence. They don't teach any of that stuff in law school. And yet, that is what thinking like a lawyer is all about. How slick and how good you are. Whether you, for instance, on influence, how do you become the authority figure in the court that the jury turns to for every element about the law? Well, I'll tell you, one of the little tricks we use all the time, and it never fails to work. You have to become an authority figure. What are authority figures? Well, professors are authority figures. I'm the professor. I told you not to memorize the law. So, like, you, like an idiot, believe it. And, well, that's the prof. The prof said that. The prof must be somebody important. Prof's smart because prof's prof. Okay? The prof's an authority figure. If you're going to be a good lawyer, you would never let anybody do that to you. You have to memorize the law. Because, see, one of the influences we use on a jury subconsciously through NLP is real simple. We become the authority in the courtroom for all the law. What we do is we fundamentally stand up there and we recite memorized law to the jury. And an argument would go somewhat like this. If our learned colleagues over there on the other bench there, those defendants or whoever they are, if they knew that an offer was a manifestation of contractual intent communicated to identified offerees with definite and certain terms, if they knew this, they knew these elements of the law. Okay. And see, now when we're saying this, we have no aids. We don't have any papers that people generally flip through. We're standing right 2 feet from the jury making our arguments. We wouldn't be here today if they knew all these elements of offer, because an offer is essential to a contract. And if you don't have an offer, you don't have a contract. And I'm going to go through each one of these elements for you in massive detail and show you specifically why there's no offer. Now, your opponent can't do that. They can't recite the law, but that your recitation of the law shows superior knowledge. Who do you become to the courtroom? You become like the prof. You have authority. You have the same authority as a judge at many times. We'll quote memorized law all the time. We'll even tell the judge what page to look it up on. Oh, that's on page 592. That's on page 592 of the evidence code. Right there. There, it says this. And you just quote it from memory. The jury sees this. Okay? Guess who becomes the authority in the court for all the law? You do. You need to learn the art of suasion, neurolinguistic programming, and influence. Like I said, I could spend forever on those 3 things. I can't. There's not enough time in this lecture. Now, when you become that familiar with everything, where it becomes internalized, whether it becomes the secondary nature of how you speak and how you think, you become capable of what's called synthesis. You're able to see things other people don't see. You're able to make suggestions that other people don't see. When you get the synthesis and you have a complete understanding of what's going on, you got it made. The vast majority of the people that went through law school don't even remotely know how to think like a lawyer. So, what is thinking like a lawyer? If they start bringing it up in class, you better ask somebody, what is that, prof? And if they don't give you an answer like we gave here, where the real answer, where we talked about all these elements and analogy and estoppel and suasion and NLP and influence and twisting facts and both sides and memorizing and applying and all the rest, they don't have the slightest idea what they're talking about. Paul D. Owen, Law School Success, frequently asked questions and questions you should ask. Thanks for listening to the lecture. Hope we conveyed some valuable information to you to save you time, money, and effort. Go to the site at www.bsmsphd.com. You can get all the rest of the lectures for free by just subscribing, and we even have some free offers for you for if you're a 1L law student. So go to the site at www.bsmsphd.com, sign up, get the rest of your lectures for free and some free product. Paul D. Owen, Law School Success. You've come to the right place.